What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Now, with Lightfall in the season of Defiance here, we got those changes to the PvE realm with the different surges and damage that we have that we can output inside of those activities. Now, this build right here is taking advantage of the Stasis surge that we will have. Super fun build that I've been using for those Stasis runs with the Renewal Grasp, those exotic arms that give us some nice juicy dust field grenades, giving us a larger radius, and the way that we're pairing this out, freezing enemies everywhere, giving us overshield. Very fun build. Now, as always, starting out right here for abilities, aspects, and fragments, we are building this out for resilience and discipline because we are going to get back our melee as well as our dodge via some of our fragments as well as our armor mods. Now, we are starting with that silence and squall, of course, so we can throw out that stasis tornado, freezing and damaging enemies in the area. Now, for abilities, you can really pick whatever you want for your first two here in Marksman's or Gambler. Gambler would be nice for your shurikens, but I personally like the Marksman, especially with the weapons we have on. Now, I am going with triple jump again, but you can pick either of these, personal opinion. Now, we're using our Withering Blade right here, that nice stasis shuriken, which damage and slows target. We're going to be using this for a nice perpetual loop between this freezing targets and our dusk field to basically always have up our abilities. And of course, with those Renewal Grasps, we're going to be using the dust field grenades that have that nice stasis field which slows, and once enemies are in there, they also freeze. Now, for our first aspect, we're using Grim Harvest, so defeating those slowed or frozen combatants creates stasis shards for us. When we pick these up, we're getting that melee energy back, so like I said, that's one way that we are getting our melee, so it's at 40 compared to the 100 we have for discipline, but those stasis shards with this build are going to be absolutely everywhere. Now, on top of that, we are going to have Touch of Winter as well. With those dust field grenades, they have increased slow field size, and it creates a small stasis crystal on impact, allowing us to break that crystal, have a huge slow field in my opinion, and we're using that to our advantage, creating those stasis shards, getting back our melee, etc., and it does stack with Renewal Grasp, so very good combination there. Now, when we move on to our fragments right here, we are going with Whisper of Chains. So while you are near a frozen target or friendly stasis crystal, we take reduced damage. This helps us with some of that endgame content, staying alive. Plus, with how we have this with the dust fields, our shuriken, as well as our weapons, we're going to have frozen targets and stasis crystals everywhere. Next on the list, we got Whisper of Conduction, so all of those stasis shards that we're creating via those slowed and frozen target defeats are going to track to our position, so we don't have to go run around and collect them, which again, they're giving us our melee back, plus we use them again in a fragment here coming up. Next off, number 3, we got Whisper of Durance, so the slow from abilities last longer. For those abilities that linger, their duration will also increase, so the slow from our dusk field as well as our shuriken will increase, plus the time that the dusk field is actually out on the battlefield has increased duration. So this build, like I said, for those enhanced dust fields, it is a super nice combination that we have, especially since we can have 5 fragments. Now moving on to number 4, the survivability side, where we are again using those stasis shards that I talked about in Whisper of Rime. Collecting those stasis shards grants us a small amount of overshield, which falls off after 10 seconds. Collecting additional shards adds to the overshield and refreshes the timer. So we're going to be creating so many stasis shards, as you'll see, basically always having that stasis overshield up. Very good for survivability and some of that harder endgame content. And last but certainly not least, even with 100 on our discipline over there and getting back our dust field fast, we're also going to be using the Whisper of Torment, so we gain grenade energy each time you take damage from targets. So in that high enemy density areas, when we're taking all those little shots, we're going to get our dust field back even faster than we already are with this build. So it's a nice feedback and positive loop there for spamming our stasis abilities, getting those stasis shards and freezing everything in our path. Now, when we move on to our weapons right here, we're going to be going with the trusty Dusty Azure Scepter, so those final blows slow nearby targets, and then they will also end up freezing them. Plus, we have the alternate fire mode. When we have our super charged up, we can switch this into that mode, and it'll freeze targets over time, so it is good for damage as well as insane for creating those stasis crystals and shards that I was talking about, which we are collecting for our overshield and melee, which gives us that ability to spam our abilities in our shuriken and grenade. Now for our energy weapon right here, I personally went with Brigand's Law with that buff to sidearms, and with Feeding Frenzy Volt Shot pairs very well for the ad clear potential of this build. We can jolt enemies for overload, and on top of that, when we have enemies frozen, you can switch to this, get a couple defeats, chain that lightning, like I said, for ad management. Anything though really fits in this slot: auto rifle, scout rifle, SMGs, but I personally went with this sidearm. Now, last but certainly not least, we got the Demolitionist Chill Clip Typhon GL5. Now, this is that stasis weapon again, and when we get defeats with it, especially on the top half of the magazine, we're going to slow targets and freeze them because of Chill Clip, and then all of those with the Demolitionist, we're going to get grenade energy back, allowing us to spam that dusk field. And when it comes to damage aspect, we can shoot an entire clip at a boss, throw our dusk field, and then again shoot the entire clip at a boss, so it helps with that damage aspect as well as freezing enemies, creating all of those stasis shards. Now, I do usually go over some of our artifact mods, but I'm not really using any too much inside of this build besides shatter orbs to get those orbs on breaking a combatant's shield, but we don't have too many stasis shields, so it really depends on what energy weapon I am running, and that is really it for those artifact mods. Now, on the flip side for our armor mods right here, we're going to be using Stasis Siphon, so when we get those defeats with our Azure Scepter or our Typhon Grenade Launcher, we're going to create Orbs of Power, plus we're going to have Special Ammo and Heavy Ammo Finder, so we never run out of ammo for both of those weapons, since they are so important, more so Azure Scepter for creating all of those slowed and frozen targets to give us those Stasis Shards. Now, moving on to the Renewal Grasp right here, the exotic arms that make these dust fields even better. Yes, I know it is at 1600 power, had to pull this bad boy out of the vault because I accidentally infused my other one. But going over this armor mod, we have Depth of the Dust Field. Our dust field grenades have a larger effect radius, and like I said, it does stack with our Touch of Winter, that aspect. Allies inside of this dust field take reduced damage, and targets inside the area deal reduced damage, helping us again for that end game content. You can throw that dust field and go stand inside of it to take less damage because of our fragments with those enemies that are frozen in there, plus the effects of Depths of the Dust Field. Now for our mods, also important on these arms right here, we're going to be using Momentum Transfer, so when we cause damage with grenade, we're going to get our melee back super fast, and with that continuous tick damage of the frozen dust field part where it slowly ticks, we're going to continuously get little ticks of that melee energy back, which we're using in right here with double impact induction. So when we cause damage with that shuriken, and we do have two of them, it reduces our grenade cooldown. So that's what I was talking about earlier with that like little internal feedback loop of using our abilities back to back, freezing everything in our path. Now onto our chest piece, which is usually the most boring part of these builds, with charged up and concussive dampener. Again, you can use concussive dampener, sniper resistance, melee resistance, whatever you're using, or activity I should say, and what you're going up against. Now, onto our boots, almost finished here with our mods. We got Stasis Weapon Surge, which those armor charges from the Orbs of Power that we're creating are going to give our Stasis weapons even more damage. So our Chill Clip Grenade Launcher, as well as Azure Scepter, is going to get that nice boost in damage, and it does decay over time, that armor charge. We're going to be using Innervation, though, and Recuperation, so when we pick up Orbs of Power, we're going to get our grenade back via Innervation, and then Recuperation giving us health on those Orbs of Power, giving us that survivability again with everything else that we have covered. And last but certainly not least, Reaper and Time Dilation on our class item Reaper, so we get that extra orb of power when we get a weapon defeat after dodging, and then Time Dilation so we can have that Stasis Surge for even longer, allowing that armor charge to decay slower. So like I said, this build super fun to use, especially on those days and activities when we have Stasis Surge. This thing has so many frozen targets going on, so much of those stasis crystals, which gives us overshield, which gives us melee, and then we use our armor mods to give us that ability feedback with using our shuriken and dusk field, and then we can even survive with all of that overshields, taking less damage inside of our dusk field, taking less damage next to frozen and slowed targets. So very fun build to use in all realms of the game, really taking it in, like I said, mostly with those Stasis Surge days, but it is one of my go-tos, especially on the Hunter here with those Renewal Grasps. If I'm not using something like Star Eaters, this is definitely a more fun build. So thank you guys again for that support. I truly appreciate it. I hope y'all can try this build out here in this season and see what it is all about. So thank you guys again. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.